Napoleon Dynamite is your dad. Napoleon Dynamite might actually be the greatest movie of all time. I know. I've made this claim before, but this time I'm serious. Not really. But Napoleon Dynamite is really good. And I'm here to explain why. A movie has a certain set of expectations. It has to be between 1.5 to 2 to 3 hours long. The plot at a minimum needs to be a congruent thought. And you have to spend a minimum of $1 million for it to be any good. Now, what if I told you Napoleon Dynamite only obeys one of those rules? Napoleon Dynamite had a budget of $400,000 and it grossed $44 million in theaters. Don't check my math on this, but that's an 11,000% profit. This movie proves you don't need ridiculous special effects to be quality entertainment. Yes, I'm still looking at you, Rings of Power. Napoleon Dynamite is based in probably the greatest time in human history. I just popped a massive zit on my skull. It's modern day, but without smartphones. And it's at a time that you could still make jokes.
You know what, Napoleon? You can lead.
You guys are retarded.
And the acting in this movie, it's phenomenal. Each of these actors feels like they were born to play their role. John Heater as Napoleon Dynamite, obviously.
Tina, you fat lard, come get some dinner. The food.
Aaron Rule, who plays Kip, yeah. And even Tina Morgina, who until this movie had only done dramas, played her part perfectly as Dab. Did you know in this scene, they didn't hire a choreographer? That's just John Heater improvising. He did a handful of takes to a few different songs, and it's easily more authentic than how scripted fight scenes look in Hollywood. Also, Napoleon Dynamite is one of the most painfully funny movies of all time.
Hey, Napoleon, what'd you do all last summer again?
I told you, I spent it with my uncle in Alaska hunting wolverines.
Did you shoot any?
Yes, like 50 of them. They kept trying to attack my cousins. What the heck would you do in a situation like that?
What kind of gun did you use?
A freaking 12 gauge, what do you think? I see you're drinking 1%. Is that because you think you're fat?
This movie breaks the most fundamental rule of storytelling. A story needs to be a complete thought. It has to be chronological, or congruent, or exist at all. Napoleon Dynamite gives 2 middle fingers to this rule and writes its own rules. You may think Napoleon Dynamite has no point because it has no plot, but I think there is a point to this movie. There's actually a very powerful lesson taught in this movie, and the lack of a plot is the point. Let me explain. Napoleon Dynamite nails the setting of this film. And if you've never been to this part of the world, you don't understand. Because it's based in a part of the world that very few humans are familiar with. And I've actually driven through this part of the world a handful of times, and it's incredible how well it fits the vibe. And the craziest thing that they actually nailed in this movie is that they had to fly LaFonda's actual family out for the movie because there are no black actors in Preston, Idaho. For whatever reason, this region of the country has very few people, not diverse. And when you drive through a town like Preston, Idaho, you'll find these towns and you'll wonder, where do these people get groceries? My car broke down in a similar place in Burns, Oregon a few years ago, population 2,000. Driving through it in the past, I thought it was one of those towns. But when I was forced to slow down and watch the town for 6 hours, I saw a whole story take place. I met the only mechanic working on a Sunday, and all his unemployed buddies who hung out at his shop all day while they listened to music from artists who would never in a million years make a stop within 100 miles of their town, and his wife and little kid pulled up like any other day. And then I saw a herd of what it must have been 40 or 50 track kids out on a 5K. I didn't even think there were that many kids in that town. And then you leave that place and you think, even the most popular person in that town will only ever be known by that town. Conquering a city is much less impressive when it's such a small place. Yet people live their whole lives this way, not really realizing how tremendous the outside world is. And Napoleon Dynamite reads more like back-to-back SNL skits. We jump between these scenes of Napoleon working at a chicken farm or testing milk for the future future farmers of America. And it's usually during these scenes that when I watch with people, they ask, is there no plot in this movie? And I feel like that's the underlining message that director Jared Hess was going for in this movie. Hess grew up in a similar kind of place in Idaho, but would eventually move out and become a movie director. And Napoleon Dynamite has no plot. The characters, for the most part, accomplish nothing. The problems are all self-contained within their small town. Napoleon Dynamite is the most socially awkward person in the town, but is totally oblivious to this. And in the same way, you can look at the people of Preston, Idaho in the movie and see small-minded people. There's an odd piece to watching these characters. They're happy, funny, and bright people. If only they could understand that they could do so much more if their energy was spent on bigger problems. Every day, their efforts are self-defeating. This is the secret message in Napoleon Dynamite. It has no plot, but it's beautiful, just like the lives of small-town America. If my hypothesis is true, imagine how great a lot of other movies could look if they implemented this. If behind a trash Tom Cruise copy and pasting movie, what if he had subtle messages for his viewers to learn only after thinking on the movie and watching it again? I promise you it'd be a lot more interesting. I'm calling for more movies to have a deep meaning that isn't visible on the surface, even if the only way to illustrate this point is in a comedy that has no plot.